Trump's biggest nightmare is unfolding before our eyes. Japan is on the verge of joining BRICS, and it could shake the very foundations of the global order. Whispers in Tokyo's corridors have turned into seismic headlines, a move that could rewrite the entire geopolitical playbook. This isn't just about economics, it's a signal that the world's power balance is shifting. And Trump's tariffs and tough talk might be the biggest mistake of his legacy. Stay tuned as we break down why Japan's decision could be the game changer that ends the era of American dominance and sparks a new multipolar world order. This is the story you can't afford to miss. The rumor mill turns into reality. For months, the international geopolitical community has been closely monitoring Japan's evolving stance on global alliances. What initially appeared as cautious speculation and quiet deliberations within think tanks and small diplomatic circles has gradually gained credibility. Obscure Japanese publications, regional analysis reports, and diplomatic leaks suggested that Japan was reconsidering its traditional alliances and exploring new avenues for economic and strategic partnerships. Over time, these whispers intensified. Influential outlets such as the Financial Times, The Economist, and Japan's own Nikkei began publishing detailed reports citing anonymous sources within Japan's government and business sectors. These reports painted a picture of a nation at a crossroads, contemplating a historic pivot away from its long-standing commitment to the United States and the Western-led international order. The reports indicated that Japan was seriously considering joining BRICS, a coalition of emerging economies consisting of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, which has increasingly positioned itself as a counterweight to Western dominance. This shift from rumor to credible reporting marks a profound turning point in global geopolitics. Japan, a country with a storied post-war history rooted in pacifism, economic growth, and unwavering alliance with the United States, is now pondering a move that could dramatically alter its international role. For decades, Japan has been the quintessential U.S. ally in Asia, relying heavily on the security umbrella provided through the U.S.-Japan Security Treaty and aligning its economic policies with Western institutions like the IMF and World Bank. Its economic model, driven by exports and technological innovation, was deeply intertwined with Western markets. But recent geopolitical shifts have begun to challenge this status quo. The rise of China and India as global economic and geopolitical powers, coupled with changing American policies, particularly under the Trump administration, have begun to threaten Japan's traditional strategic stability. The possibility of Japan shifting toward BRICS signifies not just a change in economic alliances, but a broader reassessment of its national identity and security calculus. The importance of this potential change cannot be overstated. Japan's post-war identity has been fundamentally linked to its alliance with the United States. The U.S.-Japan Security Treaty, established in 1951 and reinforced over decades, made Japan a key strategic partner for America in Asia. The U.S. maintained military bases like those in Okinawa, and Japan's economy benefited from open access to Western markets. This partnership helped Japan rebuild from the devastation of World War II and grow into an economic powerhouse. Yet, the world has evolved. The geopolitical landscape is shifting, and Japan appears to be re-evaluating its options. The rising influence of China and India, the changing priorities of the United States, and the emergence of alternative economic power centers are prompting Tokyo to consider whether its long-standing strategy remains sustainable. The possibility that Japan might join BRICS, an organization that often challenges Western economic and political norms, signals a potential end to the post-war order that has underpinned Japan's security and economic policies for generations. In the context of global power realignments, Japan's reconsideration is both a reflection of internal factors, such as economic stagnation, demographic challenges, and a desire for greater strategic independence, and external pressures, including the assertiveness of China, the unpredictability of U.S. policies, and the shifting balance of regional influence in Asia. This potential pivot also sparks debate within Japan itself. While some leaders and business elites see strategic diversification as inevitable and necessary, others remain committed to the alliance with the United States, wary of losing security guarantees or jeopardizing long-standing diplomatic ties. The coming months will reveal whether this is a cautious exploration or a definitive move toward a new multipolar alliance system. one in which Japan asserts its independence and seeks new partners beyond the Western sphere. Strategic recalibrations and growing alliances. Faced with mounting economic pressures, shifting geopolitical realities, and a desire for greater strategic autonomy, Japan has begun to explore alternative alliances beyond its traditional partnership with the United States. This process of strategic recalibration is not sudden, but rather a gradual evolution driven by both internal and external factors. As Japan reassesses its position in the rapidly changing global landscape, it has engaged more actively with emerging powers, particularly China and Russia, seeking avenues for cooperation that could redefine its geopolitical orientation. In recent months, Chinese diplomatic efforts in Japan have become increasingly frequent and assertive. Chinese officials have been making concerted efforts to deepen economic ties, with high-level delegations visiting Tokyo for meetings focused on trade, infrastructure investment, and technological collaboration. These visits are accompanied by agreements on joint research projects and infrastructure development initiatives, signaling a desire on both sides to forge closer ties. Beijing's strategic messaging emphasizes mutual benefit and the importance of maintaining stability in the region, even as underlying ambitions for regional influence grow. Meanwhile, Russia, historically a less prominent player in Japan's foreign policy considerations, has also stepped up its outreach. Moscow has offered to develop energy and technological cooperation, with Russian officials proposing joint ventures in energy extraction and nuclear technology. The two nations have held discreet meetings, and credible sources indicate that negotiations are progressing toward formalized agreements. These efforts reflect Russia's broader strategy of diversifying partnerships amid Western sanctions and increasing its engagement with Asian economies. According to reports from Bloomberg and other outlets, a pivotal moment occurred in April when a secret meeting was held in Shanghai involving officials and prominent business leaders from Japan, China, and Russia. The agenda focused on integrating Japan into the BRICS economic framework, an organization traditionally comprising Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, which has gained prominence as a counterbalance to Western influence. The discussions were reportedly conducted in strict confidence, underscoring the sensitivity of the matter. During this meeting, key topics were broached that signaled a significant departure from Japan's prior cautious approach toward China and Russia. These included proposals to settle bilateral trade in yuan and rubles, reducing reliance on the US dollar, an increasingly common strategy among BRICS members, seeking to challenge the dominance of the dollar in international trade. Participants also discussed establishing joint technological hubs focused on advanced manufacturing, artificial intelligence, and renewable energy, aiming to bolster innovation and economic resilience within the emerging bloc. Energy cooperation was another critical theme. Japan, with its limited domestic energy resources, has historically depended heavily on imports, especially liquefied natural gas, LNG. By working closely with Russia and other BRICS nations, Japan hopes to diversify its energy sources and stabilize prices. There was also talk of connecting Japanese financial institutions with BRICS's evolving payment systems, which aim to bypass Western-controlled infrastructure and create a more multipolar financial architecture. Initially, the discussions revolved around Japan's observer status within BRICS, a relatively modest step that would allow Tokyo to participate in meetings and initiatives without full membership. However, credible sources now suggest that formal consideration is underway for Japan to become a full member. If Japan joins BRICS, it would be a watershed moment, transforming from a loyal G7 member into a key participant in the Global South's economic and strategic coalition, challenging the traditional Western-led order. This potential shift has generated considerable debate among policymakers, analysts, and the Japanese public. While some see it as a pragmatic move driven by economic necessity and regional security concerns, others worry about alienating long-standing allies and destabilizing Japan's security environment. U.S. reactions, warnings, and warnings ignored. The United States, long the dominant power in the Indo-Pacific region, is increasingly alarmed by Japan's evolving stance toward the emerging BRICS alliance. For decades, Washington has relied on a close alliance with Tokyo to maintain regional stability, secure economic interests, and project military power. However, Recent developments suggest that Japan is drifting away from its traditional alliance with the US, signaling a potential realignment with the global South and emerging economies. White House officials have expressed concern that this shift could fundamentally undermine decades of strategic trust, potentially eroding the foundation of US influence in the region. Former President Donald Trump has gone further, voicing stark warnings on social media and public platforms. He claimed that if Japan joins BRICS, their economy will collapse and their exports will be worthless. Such inflammatory rhetoric underscores the underlying fear within Washington that a Japan embracing the global South could weaken American geopolitical and economic dominance. The US perceives this as a threat to its strategic interests, especially as Japan's move signals a broader trend of regional realignment and diversification away from Western-centric institutions. Despite these warnings, within Japan, there is a palpable sense of resolve. Many Japanese policymakers, business leaders, and strategic thinkers see the shift toward Asia and the global South not as a betrayal, but as an unavoidable response to the changing realities of global power. As traditional Western markets become saturated and geopolitical tensions rise, Japan is actively diversifying its trade and financial relationships. Japanese corporations are increasingly seeking new markets in China, India, Africa, and other parts of the global South, accepting the necessity of engaging with the yuan and rupees rather than relying solely on the dollar or yen. The economic and security dilemma. Japan's strategic dilemma is nuanced and complex. On one hand, the economic momentum toward BRICS and other emerging markets is undeniable. The collective economic power of BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, offers lucrative opportunities for trade, investment, and financial cooperation. Many Japanese companies see these markets as vital to their future growth, especially as Western economies face stagnation, sanctions, and political instability. On the other hand, security concerns loom large. Japan's military establishment remains wary of distancing from the US security umbrella, which has been a cornerstone of Japan's defense strategy since World War II. Rising Chinese military assertiveness, North Korean missile tests, and regional tensions contribute to fears that if Japan reduces its reliance on US military protection, it could become more vulnerable to Chinese or North Korean coercion. Nevertheless, economic imperatives are increasingly compelling. If the US continues to impose tariffs, sanctions, and other economic pressures, such as restrictions on technology transfers, Japanese companies will be compelled to seek alternative markets and alliances. Diversification is no longer just an option, but a strategic necessity for Japan's long-term economic survival. This push for independence is also reflected in Japan's efforts to develop its own digital currency, strengthen economic ties with India and Southeast Asia, and participate more actively in regional economic initiatives outside the traditional Western sphere. Many Japanese policymakers believe that a strategic pivot towards Asia and the global South can help Japan maintain its economic growth and sovereignty. This divergence from Western policies is creating a rift within Japan's political establishment between conservative factions committed to maintaining the alliance with the US and reformist or nationalist voices advocating for greater independence and regional integration. The debate is intensifying as Japan seeks to navigate a rapidly changing global landscape. The irony: Trump's policies accelerate the shift. Ironically, it was the aggressive trade policies of former President Trump that arguably accelerated the shift away from US dominance. Trump's confrontational approach, imposing tariffs, withdrawing from multilateral agreements, and pressuring allies, alienated many countries, including Japan. His America First doctrine created uncertainty and prompted many nations to diversify their economic and security partnerships to insulate themselves from unilateral US policies. Many experts argue that Trump's policies backfired by encouraging allies like Japan to seek alternatives outside of the American orbit. As Washington doubled down on tariffs and sanctions, Japan and other key allies began forging closer ties with China, India, and other emerging economies, seeking to buffer themselves against unpredictable US policies. This trend highlights a fundamental truth in international relations. When a superpower's unilateral actions threaten the stability of its alliances, those allies often seek to diversify or deepen ties elsewhere. Unless the US rethinks its approach, embracing multilateralism, respecting the rise of emerging powers, and easing economic pressures, the trend toward a multipolar Asia will likely persist. This shift is not solely about economics, but also about perceptions of global leadership and influence, altering the global balance of power. A possible turning point: the autumn threshold. As the leaves begin to turn and autumn approaches, global analysts and policymakers find themselves increasingly fixated on Japan's next move. The prevailing speculation is that Japan may soon make a formal announcement regarding its intention to join BRICS, the emerging alliance of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Such a decision would undoubtedly constitute a geopolitical earthquake, reverberating across the international arena and fundamentally altering the existing balance of power. It would signal a decisive shift away from the centuries-old dominance of American-led institutions and alliances in the Indo-Pacific and beyond, heralding the dawn of a new era characterized by multipolarity. This potential transition carries significant implications for numerous facets of international relations, economic stability, and strategic alliances. Japan's accession to BRICS would challenge the long-standing U.S. strategic dominance in the region, forcing the United States and its allies to reconsider their diplomatic and economic strategies. Markets worldwide could experience turbulence as investors react to this geopolitical upheaval. Currency markets, in particular, would be sensitive to such a move, as the inclusion of Japan, one of the world's largest economies, into a bloc largely centered around emerging markets and non-Western powers would have substantial impacts on the value of the yen, the dollar, and other major currencies. Disruptions could ripple through financial markets, destabilize existing institutions such as the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and World Bank, and prompt a re-evaluation of international economic governance. For instance, the dominance of Western-led institutions, shaped largely in the post-World War II order, might face increased competition from new alliances and regional economic councils emerging in response to Japan's shift. Policymakers worldwide would need to navigate a landscape in which traditional alliances no longer offer the same level of security or predictability. The broader perspective: a multipolar future. Japan's possible move to join BRICS is emblematic of a broader, more profound trend: the rise of multipolarity in the international system. For decades, the global order was characterized by American dominance, with Western institutions and alliances shaping the rules of the game. However, in recent years, that dominance has been challenged by the rapid ascent of China, India, and other emerging economies. China's ambitious Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, expanding influence across Asia, Africa, and Europe, exemplifies this shift. Meanwhile, India's persistent assertion of its status as a global power, coupled with its growing economic clout, further complicates the traditional Western-centric order. The potential accession of Japan into BRICS could serve as a catalyst for other countries to reevaluate their existing alliances and strategic partnerships. Countries in Southeast Asia, Africa, and Latin America may see Japan's move as a signal that aligning more closely with emerging powers can offer greater economic and strategic benefits. This could lead to a fragmentation of the once clear bloc divisions, with countries diversifying their diplomatic and economic ties in pursuit of sovereignty and growth opportunities. Conclusion: Japan's potential move to join BRICS is more than just a diplomatic decision. It encapsulates a profound transformation in the global power landscape. Driven by economic pressures, societal shifts, and strategic recalibrations, Japan now finds itself at a crossroads: whether to maintain its long-standing alliance with the West or to embrace a new, multipolar future centered on Asia and the global South. The upcoming months will be critical in determining the trajectory of this global shift. If Japan formally joins BRICS, it will represent a seismic event, one that could signal the end of the Pax Americana era in Asia and beyond. Such a move would mark the beginning of a reconfigured geopolitical map, where power is more evenly distributed among multiple centers rather than concentrated in a single superpower. The world will watch with bated breath, recognizing that the decisions made now will shape international relations for decades to come. Whether this transition leads to greater stability or sparks unpredictable contestation remains uncertain. Nonetheless, one certainty persists: the geopolitical map of the 21st century is in the process of being redrawn before our eyes. Countries, corporations, and citizens alike must navigate this complex landscape as the foundations of global influence shift beneath their feet. The autumn threshold could well be the moment that defines this new geopolitical epoch.